Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Trying to get our Tuesday ritual podcast going and consistent. So, today we wanted to talk about spiritual reparenting. Reparenting is a common practice they use in counseling. It's a concept of like basically reparenting yourself. It's kind of hard because if we look at society itself and we kind of look at how things have gone, no, there is no manual for parenting. There's no particular manual that tells you, oh, what's a good parent, what's a bad parent. Everybody has their ideas and concepts. There's books, people read books, but they're all theoretical. In practice, it's always going to show up different. So, I will just throw it out there. We blame our parents for for all of the trauma and issues we have as adults. And we point the finger right back at our parents, which is kind of funny. But reparenting yourself is not about necessarily pointing fingers or getting stuck in the narrative of my parent did this or that to me, but more of what would I have wanted from my parents
Mhm,
and would have wanted them to give me in a particular moment. And I can tell you for myself that there were moments when I was reparenting myself, and my when I was working through therapy with my counselor, she said, "What would you have wanted your mother to say, to you at this particular moment?"
mm,
And I said this, and then I went on to what I would have wanted her to say, and naturally tears came up because
mm,
there were things that maybe I wanted to hear from my parents
mhm,
that they didn't necessarily provide. And
mhm,
so it was about me providing that for myself. And instead of, blaming them or shaming them for the things that they didn't do, I was like, okay, now I'm an adult. Like I that this so I'm just gonna say this. If you're my age and you're still stuck in my parents screwed me up, gonna sound really harsh, get over it. Like, you're too old for that. But also, we know that our parents screwed us up, and that's fine. But now how do we start to move through that and heal ourselves? Because there might be these like narratives that continue to circulate and show up in other relationships and partnerships that continue to resurface. And so, how do we sort of reparent ourselves and move past the narrative so that we can start like fully stepping into our power? And so part of it is like, okay, well, my parent perhaps didn't say these things and I'm in a critical moment right now where I'm reaching and trying to figure out internally what do I need in this moment? And how do I need an assertive approach or do I need a soft gentle approach in this particular moment? If it's like I need a softer approach, then I could say, well, maybe my mother wasn't there, so I don't really know how to show up for myself. But right now, I'm going to learn how to do that. So, what would I want the mother inside of me to say? And it would be like, you deserve a hug. You're a beautiful person. I just want to hug, all that kind of stuff. On the other hand, or the other side of it would be, if there was this assertiveness, like you're not maybe getting the work you need to get done, and you're just too much in the feminine relaxing. It can turn to depression, of course, where it's like, okay, what would I want my father to say, now? What would be the advice that I'd want to hear from my father? And then just give that to myself, and then start to listen to my internal mother and father. And so I'm kind of giving this background information about just reparenting in general. And the cool thing is that you can reparent yourself. It's a pretty powerful tool.
mhm,
By
absolutely.
spiritual reparenting, that is something that's a little bit deeper in my mind, and I'm going to do quite a bit of kind of just explaining before we get into the topic so you kind of understand. So for me, a lot of the spiritual reparenting has come through kundalini, tantric breath work, where it makes sense to me more the breath than ever before. We talk about the breath. The breath is always important. And I always say it sounds very cliche to say, well, just start with the breath. But when you truly start to embody the power of the breath and really understand its force and the magnetic force that it brings to us, it's not so cliche and it's actually healing. So, spiritual reparenting through the breath has been how I am actually healing the internal feminine and masculine energies within, which would be the little girl and little boy inside of me. And so Pam and I were talking earlier, and I told her, well, what do we do for the podcast? And this is what we brought up. And what happened with me is that I started to do morning breath work. So I'm doing about an hour of breathing before I actually even get out of bed to oxygenate myself. Part of that is taking in these like really, really deep, deep, young breaths, right? Where I breathe deep into the belly. And this is a practice that's common. It's not like I made it up or something, right? Everybody talks about these belly breaths, but I do it early in the morning as soon as I wake up to clear out everything in my sinuses and to get the blood flowing and get everything oxygenated and all of that circulating through my body. Then I started to with the tantric stuff and the kundalini stuff when I had this like, sort of second awakening or real awakening, I would say. Like I don't know, people say they have awakenings, but I don't know if there's I don't know. I can't say what's real or not real, but for me it was like a real freaking awakening, like true kundalini awakening. Like I felt the snake
Mhm.
moving through my body,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And
That's about right.
yeah, and so with the air I started to look at the Ida Pingala, I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Anyway, the 2 sides of the airways in our nostrils and how those have an impact on the feminine and masculine sides of ourself.
Mhm.
And every morning I am working to figure out where the blockages in my body are. And I found that there was this huge block in the feminine side, which is, hello, no surprise. I'm sure for anybody who's listened to me in the past would know that I have this very assertive masculine side. Um, and literally suffocating that little girl inside of me
Mm.
to the point where, like, if I literally was only able to breathe out of the left nostril, I would die. Like, there's no way.
Wow.
I wasn't getting in enough air, and started to really hear this internal dialogue between the masculine and feminine energies within, where the little boy inside of me, it was like me kind of the overarching essence was like, yo, little boy inside of me, little brother, go help your sister to breathe. Like, nurture her, help her, guide her through this so that she can actually breathe. Because I literally, my feminine side was completely suffocating, completely shut off from air, from oxygen, from breath. Well, that is like the most important thing, right? Because we come into this world, the first thing we do is breathe, right?
Mhm.
And then we leave this world, that's the last thing we do is breathe.
Right?
So the breath is like the most important thing.
Mm.
And there was this huge blockage in the feminine side of me that I was like, holy crap, like she's drowning,
Mm.
she's suffocating, she's dying. And I'm like, no wonder I have so many feminine issues with my uterus and all this kind of stuff. So there was this big aha awakening moment where I was like, wow,
Mm.
like let me nurture it. Now with the breath itself, and then I'm almost done explaining and but with the breath itself, um I was being maybe assertive to try to get the energy the oxygen flowing through that nostril, like trying to clear that nostril. And I'm like, why am I being assertive? Because she's not that internal little girl is not looking for that assertiveness. Like that's probably what's kept her suffocating is that
Mhm.
people were too assertive with her and she was
Right.
afraid.
Right.
So how do I nurture this breath in a gentle, kind way that allows her to come out of hiding and to be able to fully mature
Mhm.
in a way that, makes sense? And so I had this, like, kinda dialogue between this, like, brother, this big brother inside of me, which was, like, the masculine side, going to help this, like, little sister, like, move up and start to breathe. And I can tell you that my channels are completely open. So now my breath is completely open, it's circulating, and there's this maturation process that's naturally, organically sort of happening and it's a spiritual kind of it's kind of like ascension, I guess, through the channels, through the chakras, you can say, like kind of moving up the body. So I wanted to talk about that. And so it's been profound. And, it's something that I think people can truly benefit from as a practical way to heal. So Pam, tell me what you think. There's a lot of intro.
No, it's awesome. I mean, I always love hearing your perspective. And I mean, um, right away with what you were saying about reparenting, and just not having issues when you get to middle age, right? About how you were parented. That really resonated with me because my daughter and I were just having that conversation recently, and she's 24, and I had her at 16. So, I mean, clearly I was a teen mom with my own subconscious wounds and immaturity, you know what I mean? And then like I've been honest about, some of my divorce experience and stuff in other episodes and things like that. So there was definitely like trauma things that played out that again just unavoidable, right, to the family system. And so my daughter and I, because I was 16 when I had her, like she was just my world. Like, are you kidding me? Like everything because I had no real relationship with my mom, I felt. That's where I was breaking all the cycles and the patterns, right? I was going to give this child all of the love and all of the things that I felt I didn't get. So to this day, my daughter and I have a very strong bond, and it's beautiful. And so we were talking, and her struggle has been with her father, and a lot of healing that's in work that's been needed there. And the other day she was just kind of saying how she's worked through her stuff and her issues and has kind of made peace with things. And just in reflection, she's like, I'm happy. Like you did the best you could. My life wasn't so bad. And I was like, I'm so glad and so relieved that you can be 24 and have that and not carry on all this crap that you're waiting 20 years from now to uncover. So it felt like that pattern breaker, right? We were talking about when you do the ancestral work and for a while you're doing it internally for you, you're clearing up the past, but then you start seeing it being embodied in the family root, right? And the family system and the connection. And so now seeing my grandson, just so safe, so protected, so loved, has like, all these uncles, so really strong, positive male energy that my daughter didn't get, right? Is showing up for now her son. And now he's getting her and I from this conscious parenting space. um so like it gives me so much hope for what we're doing and where that's going. And I think like healing's hard, dealing with inner child stuff, it gets buried in the subconscious. So yeah, to choose this path and to show up for yourself consistently, like I just love and admire that about the people that I meet. Um and I think it's so authentic and you just see it. And so really working with you and it was the opposites, right? Like you were in your divine masculine and I was in my divine feminine, and we knew those roles very well and it aligned us. And then there's been like this ebb and flow in this shift. And I think it was truly after we met each other in person where you're like, I can't, like I have to surrender and I need to embrace more of my feminine. And the masculine healing that I've been intentionally doing for years, I feel like has reached its own maturity, right? And so it's even a higher level of integration, um because they know, like there's no ignorance, I would say, with the energy. Like the masculine knows its role and what it needs to show up for, and the feminine knows her role and what it's showing up for. And they're consciously doing their dance and integrating and kind of going back and forth. And I think we're learning how to navigate that now through meaningful partnerships with people that we're collaborating and networking with, right? We're aligned with this bigger mission and vision and purpose, and sharing the wisdom, and not all things are going to work for everybody. That's great. I think it's you need to find practices, though. You need to really come to a space and see your own potential and want the best for your own life, so that you it can just, at least for me, like, I want to experience the beauty of the trees and the mountains and the ocean. I want to have more wonderful vacations, and like I want to keep doing more creative work and put it out there. And so, like, at the end of the day, like, I need to show up for my body, for my temple, my vessel. Like, I need to detox it and clean it and purify it, and maintain that. It's not something you can just do once in a while when you go, like, to the retreat space, like I'm planning on doing, but it's something that needs to be truly maintained. And it's been really just beautiful having the support of you, and then, like, where we can share, we can integrate together, and we can just ebb and flow through these practices that are showing up in divine timing, right? It's blossoming and unfolding naturally for us. We're not chasing after anything. There's no like, oh, I need to do breath work, like I should be spiritual. It's naturally like, this is what's going to benefit me in the now, and we're integrating that. And I've truly, truly have watched you, surrender into this feminine energy that's risen into like her creative beauty. And she's just like expressing that. And I feel like you've witnessed me step more into the business masculine, who's like, okay, like, let's do the structure stuff. Let's do the action. Like, I got all the creative dance, and but I think I balance it well, and I think you balance it well. Um and we're always just learning and growing, and like, it's just been a beautiful dance. So I appreciate the fact of all of the work, the inner work that it truly has taken to get to this point.
Yeah, it's true. And it is true that like the spiritual reparenting starts with us first, and then it kind of radiates and circulates out into the family,
Mm-hmm.
the healing of the family, which I think we talked about earlier too, because you see these shifts and changes within the family dynamic
Yeah.
after you start to do the work internally.
Right.
And it takes time because I think people want this like fast, they want like instant gratification, like it's supposed to happen fast and it doesn't. And I think that's where people sort of bail out on these, these journeys of really spiritual reparenting. Anything that takes internal work sometimes is really hard for individuals to stick with it
Right.
because they want this immediate response. Some things will happen immediately, but when you're healing lineages of trauma, when you're healing ancestral trauma, when you're reprogramming DNA internally, it's a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you're not going for a fast race, and it takes time, but as time blossoms, as things start to open, you do start to see this total reflection showing up within the family unit, and it does show up, and you got to give it time to see the miracle. I think people don't necessarily wait long enough to see the miracle. And that's something that I talk about all the time. The practice of this journey, it never ends. You're always learning something new. I think internally, I did the work by myself for so long that, I couldn't get to these places without
Mm-hmm.
partnership of other people. And that,
Absolutely.
partnership with you, partnership with, the guys we're working with and stuff like that, because that right there is the key. Because how do we have a functioning whole society when, what I see is men and women are very confused about their feminine and masculine energies. Some believe that they're just one and not the other, and that's not the case. Some are saying they're more this than that, and that's just, it might be the case internally, but the reality is true spiritual reparenting and true spiritual path to ascension is to harmonize the both sides within
Mhm.
each other,
Yeah.
integrate them into together. So integration into unity consciousness, which,
Mhm.
you know, it's that fine balance between the two, it's that harmony between the two. If you're too one or the other, there's gonna be you're gonna basically what you're gonna do is kill off one side of you that already exists in you
Right.
anyway.
Absolutely. It's dormant and, like,
Mhm,
not even it's just
mhm,
coming from, like, the wounded space.
mhm,
Yeah, it's
mhm,
gonna self-sabotage
mhm,
your daily life and relationships. You're not
mhm,
even gonna know the power of what it's doing from your psyche until you start exploring and understanding and working with it. I realized, okay, so it was a couple winters ago. Man, it was like one of the darkest winters, for me, like of like depression and just like healing the masculine. So it took me, like, I had been healing the inner child, but at this point it was like the core split, and it was healing like the inner child of the masculine, and seeing like the little boy energy that like my father and my mother interacted with and engaged with, you know what I mean? and and it was like the separate part because I'm so dominant in the feminine. So for me in that moment of awareness, it was like, oh my god, I've reached the root. Like I've reached, this inner masculine child.
mhm,
um and so then it was like, right, bringing it back in. So like that's why I'm saying the past few years it's been that integration and that maturity. And every time I've done like some plant medicine retreats and was especially with like the San Pedro last summer, and some of the ayahuasca, like it was definitely very present in the logical space of the mind, the egoic, like, right, masculine energy that was still maybe underdeveloped or wounded. um and so like you don't you don't know those kind of layers until you go looking and exploring, until you're open, right?
mhm,
Like, so it's crazy what lies within that is waiting to be acknowledged and
mhm,
healed and integrated. And then that, I feel, is how you embody it into your wholeness, right? You reclaim the lost pieces of your soul, the fragmented pieces of you, right? That's the true alchemy of lead to gold. And yeah, it's like there's a structure, and we're just
uh-huh.
so caught up in the illusion of the material realm that we're not understanding the structure of the alchemical process that is truly guiding the way of life to death and why we're here.
Well, yeah, and it's funny because it's like there's separation externally is what we see, but the
Hmm.
reality is the separation is internal.
Right.
It's an internal separation where we're separating these because the external will say, okay, male, female,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But we think that that's how we should behave internally. No, we have both internally.
Right. That's the
We
androgynous. Yeah.
externally, we embody a different sex externally,
Hmm.
you're right, and we can't change that dynamic, right? We can't. Even science can't do that, and people are doing that are really damaging their body. Like if you're born with a penis, you're born with a penis. You're born with a vagina. Sorry for people if they're they're listening to this with kids, but if you're born with a vagina, you're born with a vagina. Like there's nothing that needs to be changed. You are what you are. The fact is that internally people are confused about how they identify with their internal self. The reality is you're not one or the other, you're both. And when you learn to mature both sides of those things inside of you, it doesn't matter what you are on the external. It
Right.
doesn't matter if you have a penis or a vagina. It's not going to matter because internally you have integrated both sides of you, which are both feminine and masculine. So we hold that power inside of us.
Hmm.
And I think there's confusion right now in society around this
Hmm.
because they're looking at the external,
Hmm.
right? Instead of really looking at the internal, but the internal itself is confused, and that's why we're seeing it confused on the external.
Right.
It's not even that they're confused externally about who they are, it's internally they're confused about who they
Right.
are. And why? Because they're both. They're
Right.
not one or the other. So, there is this little boy inside
Right.
of me, and
Right.
he's actually not even a boy, he's like a full-grown man because that grew up before the little girl inside of me did, right?
Right.
But I think it's like going back to the little boy inside of me where I the way that I see my internal world is that my my masculine is a big brother to my sacred feminine because
Mm.
my sacred feminine is more um I don't want to say underdeveloped, but maybe underdeveloped's the right word, but not fully grown, right?
Right.
She's
Well, I mean,
still
how could she if you
yeah,
felt suffocated and
yep,
like that was the same thing with my masculine, right? It was dormant. Like I am so in my feminine that my masculine, like it protected for me in the way that it could, but was that in a healthy protection mode? You know what I mean? So even then when it shows up for you, it's usually like right weak, wounded, insecure,
yep.
all of those things. And so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and so, like, this so it's like internally, my dialogue is like, "Big brother, go help little
Mm.
sister," right?
Yeah. And I
Internally,
love
"Go
that
go
though,
help."
because when you look at the alchemical pictures, right? Like the
Yeah,
ancient texts and drawings, like it's the so much feminine, masculine balance. And you have the sun and the moon and all like, right, the animals and the symbolism of the man and the woman. And yet in the middle is the integration part. And so
yep,
for me, like, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense with like Artemis and Apollo. And again, like the twins, right? The twinning of the masculine and the feminine, mirroring and reflecting each other, that separation, that wholeness, and that oneness, like it's everywhere in like
yep.
universal law and like hermeticism, these ancient drawings and texts. So like
Mhm.
yeah, to
Yep,
finally come to a place to embody that and see that experience, like you know what I mean, it's beyond just learning something in a classroom, right? Like it's the next step. Now you understand why that text was written. Now you understand like what it really was showing you because you live that painting. And so like for me
yep.
so for me, I'm like, I feel so balanced between the sun and the moon, and like that's my Artemis, that's my Apollo. Like right? Like let's shine, let's do this. We know how to show up for each other now. Like we're in sync. It's no more like I'm gonna burn you with my sun or right the moon kind of hidden away in the new moon where you can't find it in the sky. You know what I mean? I think like there's energies, yeah. The sister,
Yeah,
brother. And that's why even I
sister
think the
brother.
mother, father, too, to some
Mhm.
people, right? Because I've definitely have felt that, like Jesus and Mary, that
Yep,
Trinity consciousness. I think
yep,
those are all just different structures, right, to consciousness and how it archetypally chooses to play out, yeah, through our narratives and our experiences. So it's so cool when you do the work and then you get to see that part of the programming that is not like visible to the reality that we're living in.
yep, yep,
When you're just
yep,
stressed and
yep,
worried and in survival or in drama and chaos, right? Kind of stuck leaving yourself in suffering and in cycles of pain and discomfort because you're not listening to the calling. You're too afraid to cross that threshold because it's not the same. Your life will literally fall apart, but that's the alchemical process, and you're fighting the alchemical process. Like surrender, you
I
know?
know. Yes.
There's
They
all the
I like
passion.
this.
There's the
Oh my god. Yes, you're showing your masculine energy, I love it. You're like, "Yeah,
right?
charge,"
Because
and
it
that's
is,
what
it's the
you're doing.
structures. I want to redo the structures. And my feminine's like, oh yeah, baby, let's create it. Let's dance and twirl and repaint this world. And that's what I'm doing.
Yep, hell yeah. That's what we're doing. I so yeah, and I think it's just, it's kind of really cool, and I think it's what's needed so much right now, in our society that, there's so much confusion around gender and this and that and the other, and it's like, "Oh my god," like, we're confusing the shit out of the children, you know
Mm.
what I mean? It's like, "Well, I feel like I'm a boy." Well, yeah, you feel like you're a boy because there is a boy inside
That
of you,
sheer
but there's
dominant
also
energy, like honed
yeah,
in, right? We don't, yeah, don't know how to work
but
with it,
there's
don't know
also
how to understand it.
Yeah, but there's also a girl inside of you
Right,
too. There's a little
right.
girl. It's not just all one. And for people to cling to just one thing and roll with it and think that
Mm,
it has to manifest externally is so damaging
mhm,
to the spirit, because the
mhm,
spirit is so much bigger than just one thing.
mhm. It's
It's
limiting.
both.
Mhm.
It's both.
Yeah.
And I, so I mean, I pray that individuals, and especially the kiddos who are being like fed this one-sided narrative where it's like, I felt like a boy when I was growing up.
Right, well, that's why tomboys, right? Little
Yeah,
girls, like, if you're not
yeah,
in dresses and fancy, you're a tomboy.
right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
And then,
yep,
like, boys, the boys that played with dolls or whatnot, like, you're sissy, like,
yep,
like, you're girly, like, like, boys get ridiculed for that. So it's,
yep,
like, automatically little boys are supposed to be, like, macho and stuff, and it's like, no, I've seen a lot of men who are feminine, right? Who are maybe small and petite in body and size, and they have natural like feminine energy, right? Soft voices, kindness, caring. There's a principal that I can think of off the hand. Very nice guy, but totally like feminine energy, But that doesn't. I don't feel like that takes away from his masculine, anyway. But I think it's very clear which way people can kind of lean towards, right? And that very dominant energy. And that's where I think, yeah, it's honing and understanding, okay, what's being suppressed? Why is it being
exactly.
suppressed, right? Letting it rise
Mhm,
and be
mhm,
seen and acknowledged. And that, like, that's how the balancing starts. There has to be acknowledgement and understanding, like, you exist within me. You have a role, right?
exactly.
You have a universal structured role of like why you're here, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think, and so exactly. So it's like, with that, it's like reminding them that they also have this other side to them, and you can't snuff out one side of you. And I think that's what's so scary and damaging about where society's headed,
Mhm.
because what it's doing is it's giving this false hope that there's just one side of you
Right,
that matters, and the other side is completely being snuffed out and
right,
suffocated,
right.
and that's saying that you're only half a person, and
Yeah,
that's not true. You
right.
have both. And it's so sad that, that's where we've come. I mean, for me, the narratives, I don't even understand why these narratives are circulating, because that is a spiritual inadequacy, or a spiritual misdirect, I would say. It's a because there's these spiritual misdirects that they do, and I believe they do it intentionally to keep people from realizing their full potential. Because when you tell somebody like, "Oh, well, you're a boy and this," and you feel like you have a boy inside of you and that's it, so let's make you a boy, you're saying, "You know what? Forget about the feminine side of you, it doesn't matter," and vice versa. And
Mm,
that's just damaging, because it's to for that individual to fully rise to their full potential, they have to be able to integrate the feminine and masculine within. The external does not matter. It doesn't matter if you're female or male externally. It's how do you integrate the two energies internally, and how do you reach unity consciousness to live into your full power and potential. And that is so sad, because now we have a generation of really, really, really lost individuals. They're
mm,
starting to be super lost. Well, what am I? Am I a boy or a girl? You're both. You have both of it. Externally, it doesn't matter what you look like.
mm,
It's the internal work that you do to harmonize these two potentials that live within inside of you.
mhm.
And that's what matters.
Right.
And then externally, you're gonna see how you're in relationship with other people and partnership, and how your life will blossom and bloom, because you're always gonna be, for instance, you're always gonna be chasing to look if you're chasing externally to look a specific way, you'll never fully feel that way, because you weren't born that way. You weren't born with, whatever genitalia it is that you think that you want. So you'll never fully internally come to that unity consciousness. it'll always be an external chasing of something instead of accepting internally who you are. So it's just, to me, it's very interesting. And I think, with the spiritual reparenting, I think that's kind of a first step for
Mhm.
adults, I would say. For
Mhm.
the children, I think it's just like you said at the beginning, just realizing that they have these, potentials internally within them,
Mhm.
and that both have to be given care and concern,
Mhm.
and being recognized internally,
Right.
you know, to find that harmony
Mm.
to circulate, And so, yeah, it just mind-boggling to me, and kinda sad in a lot of ways, I think it's really, really been damaging for this generation, the
Yeah.
narrative that's kind of happening, for them, you know? It externally, it's not about what you look like, it's internally how you feel,
Right.
and then you can determine, like you said, what's repressed or what's kind of just laying hidden or dormant, because the feminine in me was dormant, and so I was more masculine, and so now now I'm developing and maturing into my feminine, um in a very different way. Like, I before, I
Right.
was like, yes, I've done it, I'm maturing in my womanhood and stuff, but there was still very deep rooted stuff that
Right.
I couldn't get to without another individual helping me through it, like a masculine energy helping me through it, and breath work.
Yeah.
The breath, it would just told me everything.
Mhm.
Like, the breath will speak to you.
Absolutely. I had
So
a
pretty. No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say I had because I hold my breath. Like that was my, kind of conscious awareness realization years ago. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm always holding my breath. So, as soon as you catch on to the awareness of I think, right, it's just programmed. We don't think about our breathing. We just wake up and we go. We're not thinking like, am I breathing? I'm alive, so I know I am. But to like consciously like be aware and to breathe and to work with that. So I've had some pretty powerful sessions of breath work that, was very healing with drumming and with somebody guiding, a facilitator and whatnot. Um, and so with that intention, and you go in hardcore, it can really, if you don't understand and you're not ready, you'll be surprised. Like people are literally like, oh my God, I wasn't expecting to have a breathwork session and have like all of that come up and, be so moved and be in tears. Um, and then, yeah, so I agree. Like I've had, my ups and my downs with, trying to breathe into the stomach. Like I was telling you, that kind of that Kundalini, like fire, rapid fire into like deep into the stomach. Like I have a hard time breathing deep into my stomach. So it takes more like effort and conscious awareness. And then sometimes I think my ego panics of like shortness of breath, right? That ego death. Like, I'm just gasping for air and, so that can be kind of alarming. I used to kind of go into like a panic with that, right? Like a fearful state. I'd hop up out of bed and now it's like I can calm myself and do some like breath work, and be like, no, you're not. Like you're breathing. There's connection here. You're not gonna die. Um, so yeah, I think again, like we were saying earlier, intentionally looking within and finding what comes up, like these practices will align whatever's meant for you, that route of energy release, right? Because that's what we're doing, we're releasing stuck and blocked energy. And that's why I feel like the chakras, I'm always, talking about the chakra energy system. Because like you were saying, if there's a suppressed energy like the throat, right, we don't feel safe to express ourselves, or our words are really mean and hurtful, so like I think as a collective, there's got to be like massive like throat blocks, and that's why everybody's sick a lot and hacking and coughing, and then like thyroid issues kind of being all over the place. It's like the number one symptom of like throat chakra blocks and whatnot. Um, so yeah, it's fascinating when you really understand deeper concepts and how just by integrating those and taking time for yourself, to explore and love and honor yourself and show up for yourself, it truly truly transforms your life. And if you're ready to let go of narratives, narratives are shifting. And I think the archetypal, like, that was what was kind of coming to me while you were talking, like archetypal myth and stuff, right? When you can kind of at least hone in and know your own story, that really helps and explains things. And there's a lot of androgynous energy, right? There's a lot of like Dionysus and like things like that. And so when you naturally, at a core essence of your being, embody that stream of archetypal consciousness, right? Like, you're not realizing, you just think something's wrong with you or you're not like everybody else. Well, no, it's because like you're tapping into maybe Apollo or maybe to Dionysus or Hermes, right? Hermes and Aphrodite, they had the Hermetica, like, I'm not Hermetica, but hermaphrodite, right? Like androgynous kind of. So those are there, those are culturally and in myth, like, out there. Like, I think collectively where we are now, we're not tapped into those stories and those narratives, for what they truly are at the core of them. And what we are tapped into is like a wounded place, right? Where you think about where we left off as a collective moving and evolving through times. That stuff was all taken underground. That time, that was all crucified and burned at the stake and wronged, and libraries of ancient wisdom, like completely like burned and stolen and lost, just through human interactions over the years. So I think there's a collective ancient remembering that, like you said, there's internal conflict. Yeah,
Yeah,
so.
it's because they think there's separateness internally.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
they're separating, like, it's funny because it's like the confusion comes from, like, the external, internal, right? So,
Hmm.
a lot of it is like, "Oh, I'm a girl on the outside, but on the inside, I'm a boy." No,
You're a
that's
vessel and a
actually that's
container of
yeah,
flesh
that's
holding two streams of
that
energy that are
yeah,
not in
yeah.
alignment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's incorrect,
yeah,
right? That's an incorrect statement. What
yeah.
it's doing is causing this separation between the 2.
Mm.
And the separation is like this, now it's an internal external conflict between the 2, when that's not even where the conflict is. The
Right.
conflict is the internal battle of harmonizing both of the energies that exist within. And so now it's become even more damaging because further separation has happened, right? There, first of all, the separation, that there's this separation internally, and then this separation from the internal to the external.
Mm.
So now you're looking at really confusion
Hmm.
beyond our understanding, which is like, no, let's bring it back first. Let's look at this. Yes, externally you are a particular gender, right? You're a male or a female. Unless you are a true hermaphrodite where they have both, that's rare. It
Right.
happens. But mostly you're either male or female externally.
Right.
Internally,
Right.
right? It's the both. But
Right.
now we're adding another layer out there, and it's like making people wrong for what they look like externally. It's like another form of body shaming, and to be
Right.
honest with you,
Right.
it's another
Or
form
self
of body shaming.
mutilation, possibly in some
And
cases.
I can't
Yeah.
even understand how people are on this agenda. Like, I don't understand how people are agreeing with this agenda, because it's basically saying you're not enough the way you were made. That I mean, that's basically what it's saying, and then it's saying, "Well, internally, I feel a specific way." Well, that's okay, because we all do. We all
Right.
have that, instead of saying, "That's okay that you feel like a boy," there's a lot of people that do, but guess what? You also have this beautiful feminine inside of you too. Now, you might lean towards more the masculine, but never forget that the feminine exists in you, and vice versa. Right? And so now it's like pulling and extracting further away. It's like this double separation or triple separation that's been created, which is crazy and mind-boggling to me.
Right.
And of course, these kids are going to be in a total state of confusion, you
Right.
know, and it's really kind of sad. You know what I mean? So I can't get on board with that narrative particularly, and that's why, because it doesn't teach the child that they have both of those energies inside of them. It
Right.
leans towards one, and it's
Right.
the opposite of what's happening externally. So
It's
that's
fragmenting the
confusing.
soul.
Yeah, it's just confusing. It's further separating the soul. It's like, no, like hold on. Let's work with the internal energies first before we decide what we're going to do externally. Like because once you come to
Right.
that
'Cause
harmony,
how much is
like,
wounded trauma and and I kind of hate to say it on some levels too, but like, in the trauma program, everything, the majority of everything we were studying was either war trauma, right? Like obviously, or sexual child abuse.
mm,
And so like that's something we don't, we know human trafficking exists, but and we know like child abuse exists, but as a collective, those are the shadow wounds that we do not want to explore. And the fact is that the pattern repeats, right? We know that. So when a child is molested and maybe raped, they can sometimes obviously clearly go on and become the perpetuator and cause future violence and crimes, right? They repeat the cycle. Or the people that are abused, like are able to overcome that and not abuse others, but you're just completely, right? Emotionally, mentally, physically, like you're so altered. Like, I
mhm,
don't even think you're the core essence of who you were because of all of the coping mechanisms you had to learn to turn on in survival instinct to get through the experience of the massive trauma.
that's it.
You know what I mean? And so I think that automatically, for some people, right, that like it's easier to like be a lesbian maybe if you were raped repeatedly and to not want anything to do with men, to right, to like hate
Mhm,
that energy, that presence, not ever feel safe, and so to
sure.
like alter like your sexual identity based on that abuse. And so like I just think there are really really deep wounds within this energy in the collective, that come from the shadow that have had a ripple effect that has caused, right, the energy to show up in the chaos and the way that it is now in the collective. Because we're seeing what's out in the light, right? We're seeing how
Yep,
people are expressing and reacting. But what we're not really seeing is what everyone's hiding in the shadows that is causing them to present themselves to the world in those masks and those roles and those ways, right?
yep,
So like in mental health, we know in the United States, mental health, suicide, you know, sexual abuse happens to children more than anyone wants to ever talk about or admit. And like, what do you think those shadow impacts are creating that we're seeing in the society as well? People are living out subconscious traumas that have happened to those masculine and feminine energies that don't know how to protect itself and feel safe, that don't know how to express itself, right? The feminine doesn't know how to be creative and express herself and feel safe in that role. Masculine is over assertive, right? Overprotective, dominating. Like there's all the imbalance. So it's
well,
something
yeah,
that we need to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. We need to lose judgments or fears of like, right, our own kind of like good and bad shadow perspectives. And we just really need to understand like, because that's that block kundalini, right? When the sexual kundalini energy can't be expressed in harmony, like that's what's causing all the shadow stuff. That's what's causing all the sexual abuse and the trauma, like, right? So like we have to look at the shadows. We have to like explore like why these feminine and masculine energies can't be, addressed and seen and talked about and understood collectively. And like, right, isn't that a common topic of like like psychology? And I feel like we're progressing forward, like we have to change the narrative of conversations that have meaning, that have healing, rather than the same equality and division, right? Because I mean, you look at the cycles of what we've gone through since the 60s when they were fighting against war, and then, the Black Lives Matters, like women's rights with abortion, the LGBTQ, like, like trying to, so it's like all of these divisions that are trying to rise and ebb and flow, right? To like, but there's still so much in the shadows that are causing what we're not seeing.
Yeah, a lot of it is like you said that children are being abused, and we don't talk about how more men are probably molested than women, more
Mm-hmm.
boys.
Right?
That
Look at
that's
men
a big
being
one.
beat in relationships by adult women. Like they don't
Yeah.
talk about that. Cops like cops laugh and leave or whatnot. I've
So,
definitely dated somebody that was assaulted and I saw him like flinch and stuff. I was like, oh wow, like this is serious. Like this is
mhm,
gonna take time to like
mhm.
like you don't need to be afraid of me. I'm not gonna smack you. Like that was insane to me, like to experience that. But it's true.
It is true.
And men
It
are
is true. We don't
yeah, I was gonna say I
we don't
think men are also like demasculated and I'm thinking, right, like, oh gosh, what is it when like they neuter, right? What is that word? When they cut off like the
circumcise,
manhood. Huh?
circumcise,
No, like, but like cut off like all of manhood.
castrate.
Yes, castrate. Thank you. Yes, I
Uh-huh.
think women. I think a lot of the relationships the collective are in now. I think the women have like castrated the men, and the men just stay like committed to these women with like no true masculinity, while they're coming from like a manipulative, wounded space, holding all the power and control. And like vice versa. Like men hold the women into like these roles so there's a lot of abuse that's happening because the integration process isn't being seen and understood within. There's a lot of people just staying in toxic, wounded behaviors and patterns, right? Causing their own suffering, causing their own like toxic relationships, and then just realigning with somebody else and doing it again and not understanding like the quantum entanglement of what you're like putting out and getting. So you really do have to like have a time and space to like separate you and understand you, so you understand that, right, what you're getting coming back
Yeah.
from, towards you, mirroring towards you, like you're saying, that external. If the internal, like, yeah, an internal is all confusion and chaos, your whole external is going to be confusion and chaos. If the internal is dominating and suffocating and controlling, that's what you're going to get in your relationship, right? If you're stifling your manhood or your womanhood within and letting the other one take over, like that's going to be mirrored back in your relationships. Otherwise, there would be more balance and harmony within your relationship, and your home is going to be more balanced. Abuse and stuff will naturally I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. It will naturally, you know, um, dissipate. Like, and I think that's where we're evolving to, right? As a species, I think that's how we naturally grow and ascend into harmony, right? That's where we're at. We're at this like paradigm shift. We're at the foundation building. Like that's why we're feeling really passionate about doing the work and then teaching it to others, because it's not mainstream. Like, it's not it's not the 9 to 5 as much as I wish it was, but it doesn't mean it's not going to get there in some ways. It is an energy exchange at the end of the day. Um, so yeah, I'm just like getting I was not expecting to get so fired up through this episode and this discussion. So I think it's just beautiful. Like, I guess I'm
I'm
feeling
just
safe to like let it out apparently because I dropped the F bomb.
I'm just sitting here letting you do whatever you're gonna do. I'm like, okay. I think it's a lot of just that masculine energy showing up too, right? That
Right.
assertiveness, that
Right.
passion.
Yeah. Like my
Yeah.
voice has something to say, and I know like it has value and it has worth. Like I've lived the experience, it's not even about researching and like the credentials, right? We get so wrapped up in labels and credentials. Like, no, I mean, this is why we are true master alchemists. We are day in and day out from the moment we like consciously open our eyes and take a breath to we are consciously setting intentions and going to sleep. And even in our dreams, we're still doing the healing and the work and waking up and processing our dreams and integrating it all. Like it doesn't ever stop. Like we're just And it's like, oh wow, okay, like I'm not even human. I'm just stepping back and like, oh wow, look at how it's programmed to trigger and bring people and let people go. And like it's so beautiful. And it's just like now I understand though, right? Now I understand like the Buddhist and like the path of enlightenment and causing your own suffering. It's like, like you truly, truly see it. It's like it doesn't have to be so complex. Let's be simple and just let's go back to just educating ourselves on like a deeper truth,
Mm.
okay? A
Tell him,
deeper
Pam.
truth that you know within. Whew.
All right. That was very good. Oh my gosh.
I love this
Oh, wow.
episode.
Yeah. Oh, good. Oh, I'm like, you tell him, Pam. You go
Right,
for it. You let it all out.
right,
You tell them.
right. Because I mean, at
No.
some point, like we can only accept ignorance. We can only make excuses, procrastination, right? Like, oh, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. We prioritize, but at the end of the day, like prioritize your priorities, right? Like make yourself the top priority. Like make the mental health, the physical health, right? Like calming and just I think understanding like the way the brain's wired, it's wired for negativity. The reptilian brain system of the survival mode, right? Understand how you're wired for fight or flight. Like you said, don't blame your parents for everything. Like that is the core programming that like we chose to experience. Like things are just free will and destiny entwined, and it's beautiful. Like I think if we just shift into more gratitude and beauty instead of like the hate and the judgment and like the pain, because it's easy to stay in that heavy darkness. It takes real courage to like move yourself and hold yourself accountable and responsible for your own growth, your own healing, right? Whether it's nutrition and working out or actually going within and understanding the psyche and like how you're wired and programmed, and then rewire and reprogram yourself in the best ways that fit for you. Don't give your power to other people, and expect them to do it for you. And I think that's where we are at a collective where everything's just chaos, right? It's chaos theory. Like people are just kind of running around and like some people are figuring it out and getting it and trying their best and other people are never going to get it. And you know what I mean? So it's really hard to go out in the collective and interact with human beings some days and to be like, oh, I hate people. Like that's the energy you're going to put out as you're leaving your house. Like you're just giving that to everyone that you engage with. How about just some sympathy and compassion? Like they're not getting it, but that's okay. Like I think we have to shift, we have to shift from within. So I can see you laughing at me. Okay, I'm done. I'm done.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I go off. It's all good.
Yeah.
There's,
No,
there's
but
you do not have to apologize or minimize. You can
yeah.
let it all out, you know? It's
Right.
good. I mean, sometimes that assertiveness is needed, like
Right.
wake the hell up. I used to say that all the time when I first started this
Right.
podcast. Wake up, people, wake up.
Right.
And
Right.
I
And that's what it is. It's my divine mother, right? The core mother, my wholeness, like Isis. That's what it is. It's Isis saying, "Come on, my children. Like, all right, I'm giving you the advice. I'm giving you the wisdom, and like, you're not listening. You're not getting it. And so, like,
yeah.
I can't do it for you. You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink." And I'm like,
No.
the universe over here, like at the lake, like, come on.
I
there's so much beauty here. You can like drink and nourish yourself for your whole lifetime, but you'd rather like run around in circles chasing your own tail in the pasture.
and that's the majority of
Right.
individuals.
Right,
And it's
exactly. So that's why I feel like frustrated. Like
yeah, it is frustrating. It's very for me, it weighs on my heart in a lot of ways,
right.
And
Yeah.
so, I think part of it too, it's like you said, it's the shadow stuff that nobody talks about. I mean, they are. I'm
Mm.
not gonna say nobody's talking about it, it's not
Right,
true.
right.
But we don't know collectively what to do to heal it, and nobody does, because it
Right.
takes so much of our independent self to heal ourself, and that means
But
stepping away
that's what
and
heals the
letting
bigger
go of
picture.
all these relationships, letting
Mhm.
go of all these things that we care about so that we can actually move forward and heal our own self. But
Mhm.
that means we have to let go. And
Right.
that means letting go of our old
Trust in the
lifestyles,
process.
letting go of all of these things that we quote unquote think we love, letting
Yeah.
go of the illusion, letting go of following, football teams and logos and all these things, and really focusing on yourself. You know,
Mhm.
if you go into Nepal, right, where they're actually carrying these baskets of food on their head and they're carrying water up the hill, you know what I mean? It's like, man, that days of work has meaning. It's
Mhm.
purposeful. They are there to help their self nourish, survive. I mean, the reflections that they're having as they're walking up, they're able to breathe in the air as they walk up. We have big sports teams and logos and marketing and, buy this, buy that, comforts, this and that and the other. We're so disconnected. And
Mhm.
so that shadow is going to show up. And are we going to, face the shadow together, or are we just going to let it completely just embody us and let it take over our life? You know what I mean? And that's difficult because in America itself, it has you at every level. And even now with technology and phones and stuff like that, it's reaching across the entire world, where we're so suffocated by all of this shit that they put in our
Mhm.
face, that
Right.
we don't have the time to reflect on nature. We don't have the time to
Right.
remember that nature has this beautiful
Right.
harmonious balance between the feminine and
Mhm.
masculine energies. We
Right.
can't even see it. We're
Right.
not seeing it because we're watching our phones. We're not
Right.
watching nature. We're
Right.
not out there listening. There are people who are, but it's very rare. Even myself. You know what I mean? I'd be lying
Yeah.
if I said that I did. Like, this phone has become such a nuance to our well-being and our connection to
Mhm.
nature and everything else. How can we face the shadow? The
Right.
shadow's all on our
You're
phone
distracted
everywhere.
all the time.
Yeah, we're distracted so that we don't face it. But,
And pleasures, which is the shadow.
yeah. And I don't think that it is and it isn't. Like, I think you should have pleasures in certain things, but
Right,
it's
it's
that
the excess.
extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
extreme part of it. Like,
Right.
not pleasure all the time, all every day, all day, every day, right? The pleasures in, like, you know what? I worked fucking hard. Excuse my language. Now I'm cussing. I worked really, really hard. I deserve these strawberries that are so fresh and just juicy and like nourishing, and like I can just indulge in them
Right.
and savor the flavor, and they taste sweeter and more juicy because I've worked so hard, rather than I can just have all the strawberries I want at any time. Because why? Because we want to be comfortable, because we're not working for it. It's just this big complex thing that we've created. And this is what I like about the gene keys, which we'll get to next time, because it's been about an hour.
Yeah.
We need to wrap up. Is that, you know, the simplicity of life is what we've
Mhm.
forgotten. We're too freaking complex. And then shit needs to end. We just need to get back to simple. And
Mhm.
and we don't even know how to do that. You know what I mean? We're overcomplicated every damn thing.
Mhm.
It's ridiculous. And simplicity is the way to go. If
Yeah.
you can simplify it and start by reparenting yourself, in the most simple way, through the breath.
Mm.
There you go. Use your breathing to help you heal that sacred, feminine, masculine energies within, to reparent yourself.
Right.
It's that simple. That's
Yep.
it. Simple.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So, thank you, Pam, for
Yeah,
I
no,
love the
thank
passion you
you.
brought today. And that no, it's good. Um,
Yeah.
so you can follow us on womenofconsciousness.com. If you are wanting to attend our goddess circles, you can go and you can definitely sign up. We will be doing our next goddess circle next a month. And we would love to have you there. We'll be talking about sexuality. So that's kind of nice for the women. Just sign up. We will post it on the Facebook group. And also, you can visit our website, womenofconsciousness.com. I think I already said that. And then Instagram as well at Women of Consciousness. Anything else before we let them go?
Nope, I think I've said enough.
All right.
Have a
You
great
guys have a
day.
good day.